I can now talk a lot louder now because I've moved to a different location entirely. I've moved to like a patio of like a completely different house and no one can hear me, so I can speak as loudly as I want now. And this ties into the technique I've invented, or maybe I haven't invented it, but this technique that I found out by mistake is insane. And I'm gonna call it AILD, Audio Induced Lucid Dreaming. Now, basically, this lucid dreaming technique is similar to AILD. You know AILD, where basically you visualize something at nighttime, or when you do like the wake back to bed, and then you get like a lucid dream because like you visualize it, and then you kind of like fall into like the visualization. And that's kind of like how you when you want to lucid dream about a certain place, you can actually like get like a really high chance of actually going into that when you visualize it beforehand. Well, I actually found out by mistake. This is actually happening when I was moving. So basically, when I was moving, I was sitting, well, I actually was like, okay, long story short, I woke up on the floor of my room at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was wrecked. And I was like, wait, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be on the couch. So I go out of my room, I go to the couch, the lounge room on the couch, right? And for some reason, my imaginative, like, hearing was like really intense to the point where like it almost felt like I was schizo. And it was very easy to like imagine any audio I want. And like, I'm actually pretty good at this. Like I can like ruminate. My brain like constantly ruminates on like lyrics and music all the time. However, at like when it was like night, like it was basically like an automatic self, awake back to bed, basically, right? But anyway, when I did that, it was so vivid. Like the audio was so vivid, it almost sounded like it was coming outside of me. And I've actually talked about the problem with AILD. So I've talked about like, visual induced lucid dreaming, how I have a problem with that because it's kind of like a gamble. At some point, I will be very visually like engaged. Like I can like close my eyes and very like, visually like see something. And at some points I just can't. And that happens like sporadically throughout the day. But it really, for me, it's a gamble on whether or not I'm actually gonna like be very visual when I do a wake back to bed. However, when it comes to imagining audio, I can basically always vividly do that. My brain is just wired in that way. And so anyway, this is how the technique works. When you're doing your wake back to bed, you imagine just anything you can. Imagine sounds, music, and basically your brain will fill in the blanks. What do I mean by that? Well, whenever you're imagining music, for example, and then you go into a dream, sometimes like the music may just be like in the atmosphere, almost like how a video game works, where it's like the music's just playing in the background. But at some point, you may also experience like you're imagining music, and then you're in your dream. It actually comes from like a radio or like a jukebox or something like that. They can actually interact with, and then once you interact with it, it changes the flow of like the audio, right? But it makes sense. The way that audio-induced lucid dreaming works, because if you're imagining a conversation, for example, right, and even if you're not visualizing anything, on your sight, when you go into your dream, obviously you are gonna get lucid, because like the audio is like holding you from the waking world to the dream world, right? And then basically your brain automatically fills in the blanks. So if you're imagining a conversation between like people, or like you know how you can imagine the atmosphere of like a crowded mall, or like the indoor swimming pool. Like I can very vividly hear that in my head, right? Maybe like you can vividly hear like children at like a playground, for example, just like the atmosphere of it. Maybe if like you're very bad at visualizing, this can help you. You can just imagine like the audio, and basically when you go into a dream, your brain will visually fill in the blanks. So basically what happened to me was that I was like imagine like a conversation. It was like very like vague. I couldn't even tell what the fuck was going on, to be honest, right? But then basically I went into the dream, and then I was like in a town, like a small town, and the visualization, obviously carried over. I wasn't visualizing anything. I wasn't visualizing this town, but I was imagining the audio of like a conversation which formed itself into like this town thing, and it was crazy. And then I was like, hey, maybe this is a fluke. Maybe it's because like I woke up on the floor of my room, that like some like crazy like coincidence that like I just randomly got a lucid dream, right? We actually tried this a couple of times, and it's actually been very high like success rate of getting lucid dreams. It's insane. And so basically this is the technique if you want to copy it and just you want to skip to this part of the video. Basically, this is what you do. Whenever you would do a lucid dreaming technique, anything that involves in like, you do like your bullshit, you do like your way back to bed, all that sort of stuff, right? But instead of like, you do like the SSI, like it's very complicated. You just do this. You lay down in bed, and you don't like, how like you and I, we meditate basically, and we're always constantly pushing thoughts aside so that we can just like lock in. You actually just want to like let your brain ruminate on anything that you can imagine in terms of like audio, right? Like right now I can imagine like, like the atmosphere, like the sounds of like a crowded mall. And don't be like worried that this is gonna like, keep you up. For me, it's very like automatic, I'm not even trying, right? It just happens. And then you just fall asleep. Don't even worry about like, continuing the audio. It should just automatically play in your head. And if it isn't, just focus on falling asleep. Like, the rule that you should always follow is that when you're trying to lose a dream, priority is falling asleep. Second priority is, the lucid dreaming technique, basically, right? But anyway, but this like audio, like induced lucid dreaming is crazy. And obviously, like, I'm not talking about like actual audio. Don't play like actual audio. Put in like your earplugs and don't listen to anything. Let's just like maybe listen to white noise. But just like imagine audio. I know there's like some people are like, is it like aphantasia? It's like something to do with like they can't visualize or something like that. And obviously I can visualize shit in my head. Like I'm not like an NPC basically, but I can. It's different where it's like I can constantly think about sounds, but I can't constantly like vividly imagine stuff. Like, and especially when it comes too complex, like I can't vividly imagine like a blue Dalmatian, like like something crazy like that. Like it takes a lot of effort, and it's not perfect. You know what I mean? Whereas audio, it's basically always like close to like the audio that I'm trying to imagine anyway. So this is what you do. That's all you have to do. It's just whenever you would do you normally do a lucid dreaming technique, you do your way back to bed and all that sort of stuff. You just do this. You lay back in bed, no sounds at all. You imagine an atmosphere, sounds, maybe, and I think I haven't really tried this with music, but I think it would probably work with like if you were imagining like the lyrics, you were fucking listening to like the lyrics of like Lady Gaga or some shit. You know what I mean, right? You just imagine anything you can, and then when you fall asleep, this should really carry along with you. And then you're going to be like worried about, like I'm not visualizing anything, so like what the dream isn't going to work. It's actually going to work, because if your dream has to fill in the blanks, it just automatically does that for you. A lot of like your visual like your visual cognitive experience is literally just filled in blank. It's not even like real half the time, right? And so basically when you're going into a dream, and let's say I'm imagining like the audio of like a crowded mall, right? What will happen is that I'll imagine the crowded mall, and then I'll fall asleep, and then the crowded mall will conjure up the actual like a crowded mall, and I'll be in there. And then at that point, when you're lucid, then you can do whatever the fuck you want. Then you can choose to go to like different places and shit like that. So it's like literally just use the audio induced lucid dreaming technique as like an anchor, and then you can like if you want to actually be in a crowded mall, you can just fuck off and go somewhere else. You know what I mean? Just dream control, do that type of shit. But this is insane, and I found this by accident, and I'm sure that it's like, it's like a different method of, it's basically SSR, probably, and maybe if like some random dork in like some like Reddit forum was like, oh yeah, they already found this method before I did, but I just want to talk about this on my channel because like this is just, I hardly ever hear, like even on the tier list, right? So like for the tier list, I would rank this like fucking S. This is insane because it's worked so many times in like a short amount of time. It's crazy. And so, yeah, anyway, I never see this. Like, no matter like what tier list or like whenever like you search up like, lucid dreaming techniques, I never see this anywhere. It is insane that it works so well. No one's talking about it. No one's just talking about, yo, I have to like visualize and visualize. It's like, you don't have to visualize all the time, bro. You can just, the visualized version of audio, just imagine sounds. And so, yeah, this is all I wanted to talk about. I don't want to yap about this quickly because it was just insane that I found this out, and it's crazy. I'll talk about like, if there's like anything crazy that happens afterwards, but it's just been normal lucid dreams. And so if you want to get a lucid dream and you really struggle with visualization and shit like that, obviously like, grow the visualization and all type of shit. But then just like, just do the audio, just do it, just try it, bro. Just try the audio, There's nothing I really need to talk about anymore. What do I say normally? Like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and see you.